Ladies and gentlemen, this is a huge victory for anyone, conservative or liberal, who just enjoys freedom and the First Amendment. You can't just arbitrarily make these protocols without direct evidence. I'll leave it at that. What Democrats did is they said, well, protests, totally fine. Hundreds of thousands of people in one location, oftentimes not abiding by required protocol. No spreading. Everything's fine. It's perfectly... There haven't been any studies. Well, could you imagine? Could you imagine the group that performs a study that's detrimental to whatever the narrative is? There have already been studies on certain types of medication, and oh my God, and then it's immediately, if there's a positive study, immediately there's a negative study. So it's all public relations, which is why Democratic states had the worst outcomes. Go look at the New York Times. We'll look at the New York Times in a couple minutes. But they come up with these arbitrary rules. We can't do this. We don't feel that's right or safe. Well, these are the same people who were obsessed over President Trump and whether he worked with Russia for 4 years, which was complete. Oh yeah, you'd have to be an imbecile to believe that he did, because there was no direct evidence of anything. There wasn't even circumstantial evidence. They purchased a Steele dossier, and then they had high to moderate confidence assessments from intelligence agencies who haven't been right since the Bay of Pigs and the Gulf of Tonkin and WMD. When have they been right about something grandiose? If anything, their failures have led us into catastrophic consequences. But then you have, I'll just read you this. Supreme Court says California must allow in-home prayer meetings. This is a huge victory for anyone who loves freedom, like being able to live in a free society. Okay? But what about Grandma? Well, God bless Grandma. You know what Andrew Cuomo did? This is what Democrats do. They say, you can't worship in your home. You can't do it, Grandma. And then they have Andrew Cuomo, who is directly linked to 15,000 lives lost by putting infected people into elderly care facilities. 34% of all the lives lost from this pandemic took place in elderly care facilities, or the people lost their lives in elderly care facilities. You have California, you have New York, New Jersey, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Those states, the governors of those states, and then you have Phil Murphy, you have especially Andrew Cuomo and Whitmer now, investigated for putting infected people into elderly care facilities. That is completely ignored by media. It's these types of things that they say, well, you know what, you can't do that because it's a risk. It's a risk. And it's like, well, where's the direct evidence? Where's the direct evidence? You don't have direct evidence of, really, you don't have direct evidence of anything the past, like, of any of their statements. They had 4 in-person primaries, but you can't, so Illinois, Miami, Arizona, and Wisconsin, where people were stuck in the rain, waiting in line to just kick Bernie Sanders out into the curb. So they voted against Medicare for all while during a pandemic, the height of the pandemic in April, getting drenched by rain and pelted by hail. This is the Democratic Party for you. But you can't worship in your house. You can wait in line. You can wait in long lines to vote for your favorite Democrat, our beloved President Joe Biden, but you can't worship in your house. Voting in line in 4 Democratic primaries during the height of the pandemic, good, very good, safe, very safe, what's the problem? But worshiping? No. But anyway, and in order from the court, 5 conservative justices wrote against rules in most parts of the state. And by the way, this is a win for President Trump. It's a win for Republicans. They're the only ones right now who seem to care about living life in a manner that is somewhat closely related to freedom. Not all Republicans, but conservatives in general, or there are liberals too who also agree, like, with this decision. So it's not, like I said, it's not just Trump, it's not just Republicans. Anyone who just wants the Bill of Rights to remain intact, you know, a public health crisis should not be justification for Democrats to arbitrarily make rules that benefit one side and hurt another side. Hit subscribe to this channel right this second. So in an order from the court, 5 conservative justices wrote against rules in most parts of the state that limit indoor social gatherings to no more than 3 households, while different restrictions apply to places such as schools and churches. Okay, so California treats some comparable secular activities more favorably than at home. Exactly. So permitting hair salons, retail stores, personal care services, movie theaters, private suites, and sporting events and concerts and indoor restaurants to bring together more than 3 households at a time. So if you're not applying the protocol fairly, then why on earth, this is also you have to understand the way Democrats work, and the way oftentimes the way they govern is they govern through their sensibilities. So what feels good to them, they'll point to 1 or 2 studies. Forget about Sweden, even though Sweden is doing better, has done way better than France, UK, Italy, and Spain. And they had the most heavy-handed, draconian, strictest response to the pandemic. Sweden had practically no response at all. Nothing, everything was allowed, and they had a better outcome, much better outcome. And then the only rebuttal is, well, the other, their neighboring countries, Norway and Finland did better than Sweden. And it's they're half the size, and there are other issues as well. But even if you wanted to bring that up, then why did Sweden do better than the UK, France, Spain, and Italy? Why? Why are red states doing better than blue states? Here, you can look. Let's just see, New York Times. You can look, ladies and gentlemen, and hold on one second. If you look at the last time I saw, it was 7 of the top 11 states with the greatest number of lives lost were Democratic-run states. That's unfortunate. God bless the people in those states. Here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So Massachusetts, Michigan, Illinois, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and California. 7 of the top 11. That's today, April 10th. Have the greatest amount, the greatest number of lives lost. Okay. New York, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island have the highest per capita rates. Okay? The highest per capita rates. And so, how on earth can you say that Democrats know all the answers? They have all the experts on their side. They have all the studies on their side. Well, they don't ask experts that disagree with them, and they don't look at studies that disprove what they say, and they don't look at areas of the world and also areas of the country. You look at New Jersey and New York. God bless the people of New York and New Jersey. You want to know what Democrats in New York and New Jersey were focused on? Impeaching President Trump. How on earth does Schumer and Gillibrand, de Blasio, how did Cuomo get away with what he did? AOC. Has anybody asked AOC about New York's pandemic response? So, Phil Murphy, Andrew Cuomo, how did they get away with, it was all one person's fault? We have 50 states, 50 governors, 100 senators. We have hundreds of Democratic representatives. How do they get away with everything? How do they circumvent this negative media coverage? So, you're just going to arbitrarily say, well, you can't allow people to pray inside, but you can allow people to do a lot of other things indoors. And then even the data, if you just well, outdoors fine, hundreds of thousands of people in one location protesting for 5 months throughout the country. Totally wonderful and no problems at all. It's like you had the most draconian responses led to the worst outcomes. Go look. This is the New York Times statistics. And then you have the Bureau of Labor statistics, where Democratic-run states have the worst economies. They tanked their own states. They had the worst outcomes. They have the worst economies. They had the most property damage. And then they blame Trump. And they said, oh, this is Trump's America. It's your policies that allowed all of this. It's your favorable media. It's the media that focused only on Trump and ignored Andrew Cuomo, to the point where Andrew Cuomo wrote a book on leadership lessons. That's like Jeffrey Dahmer writing a cookbook. So just look. New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. And then you have Connecticut. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the top 7 states. New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Mississippi, Arizona, Connecticut. 5 of the top 7 states with the highest per capita rates are Democratic-run states. Then Jonathan Swan tried to ambush Trump. He said, but we have the highest per capita rates. Yeah, well, Democratic-run states, New York being one of them, New Jersey, these are populous. New York's one of the second most populous state after California. Or no, third, I'm sorry. Or fourth. So Florida and Texas. But anyway, you have the highest per capita rates, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. Total number of lives lost, California and New York. That's 110,000 Americans, over 110,000 just in 2 states. Okay, just in 2 states. And like I said, New York has the highest per capita, or the second highest per capita rate. So California is doing much better. But California's, more spread out. There are other reasons too. But you have these Democratic governors, you have Democrats in Congress who just were focused on impeaching Trump. They literally went from impeaching Trump to saying that Trump shouldn't have banned any travel. He was a really horrible person. And Trump initially, in late January, began addressing the pandemic. Then they say he was late on the pandemic response. He was addressing the pandemic when they were still focused on impeaching him. In early February, the Senate acquitted him. So, you look at and the best outcomes, Alaska, Hawaii, Wyoming, North Dakota, Montana, South Dakota, Idaho, Iowa. You can look, and Kentucky, you can look at Kansas, West Virginia. They have the best outcomes. And, Florida has much better in terms of, and they had a much better response, and they weren't as draconian. Pennsylvania has a much higher per capita rate than Florida. So does New York and New Jersey. California just got under Florida in terms of per capita rate. But California had a higher per capita rate up until recently. Illinois has a much higher per capita rate. So you can look, and the states that did the worst, we can just go to the New York Times. Pandemic in the U.S., latest map and case count. Total lives lost. I'm using the definition of the word, but total lives lost. California, New York, and then you can go down Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Illinois, and then Michigan and Massachusetts. 7 of the top 11. So they don't have, they blame Trump, and they did so not to save people's lives. They did so just to make themselves feel good, just like what they're doing, just like what they've allowed to take place at the border. They were the morally superior, righteous, indignant, morally superior liberal Democrats. And now look what's taking place. It's worse. The same facilities are overrun now. And it's an even worse crisis than anything Trump presided over. And nothing, no outrage, no obsession, no nothing. The Vice President, Kamala Harris, hasn't even visited to see what's going on. It's unbelievable. And the difference, the difference in reaction, and there's no outrage now. And you see, on every major topic, Democrats are pure public relations. It's pretty unbelievable. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. This is a huge victory for President Trump.